Have you ever stopped and wondered how the stories in the Gospels actually got passed down, before anyone even wrote them? Well, today we're going to explore a really powerful and pretty controversial scholarly tool called form criticism. Think of it like a form of literary archaeology, designed to peel back all the layers of these ancient texts and try to find the original stories buried inside.
But let me start with a question for you. Think about any story you've ever heard, one that's passed from person to person. How much does it really change? Does it stay exactly the same, or does it kind of evolve with each new storyteller?
It's kind of like that classic story of the fish that got away, right? With every single person who tells that story, the fish just seems to get a little bit bigger. And that right there is a perfect, super simple way to think about what can happen in an oral tradition. Now, imagine you're a biblical scholar in the early 20th century. You're facing a similar puzzle, but on a way grander scale. See, there was this gap, maybe 30 to 40 years, between the life of Jesus and the moment the first Gospels were actually written down. For decades, these stories were only circulating by word of mouth. So the big question became, what happened to them during all that time?
To even begin to tackle this problem, scholars realized they needed a whole new toolkit. So they developed a kind of method for literary archaeology, a way to dig through all those layers of tradition, hoping they could unearth the original stories.
And that method is called form criticism, or if you want to use the original German, Formgeschichte. The whole goal is to analyze these materials that were passed down orally, identify their recurring literary forms, and then try to restore them to what these scholars believed was their primitive, original state. Okay, so a tool like this doesn't just appear out of nowhere, right? It was actually forged over almost a century, building on the ideas of thinkers who'd already started to question the traditional ways of looking at the Gospels. So let's trace this path for a second. The skepticism really started to build way back in the 1830s, with scholars arguing the Gospels were mostly myth. Then came theories that the early church wasn't unified but was actually defined by conflict. And then came the idea that even our earliest sources were theological creations, not pure history. The method got a test run on the Old Testament, and then finally, after World War I, this scholar named Rudolf Bultmann took the fully developed toolkit and applied it to the New Testament. F.C. Baur's theory was a huge deal. He didn't see the early church as this one unified thing. Instead, he saw it as a clash between two major forces. On one side, you had the Jewish church, led by Peter, focused on Jesus as the Messiah. And on the other, the Gentile church, led by Paul, who saw Jesus as a divine figure, as God. Bultmann would later use this whole framework of conflict to help him decide where a certain story or saying probably came from.
So that's the backstory. But how does this thing actually work in practice? Let's break down the step-by-step procedure for taking apart one of these stories. First up, what in the world is a form? The source we're looking at gives us a great analogy. It's like a Jell-O mold. The mold itself is the structure, that's the form. The Jell-O, well, that's the content you pour into it. Or think about filling out an application. The structure is always fixed, right? Name, address, etc. But the content, your specific details, changes. Literary forms, they argued, work just like that.
Bultmann's method was really built on a few core assertions. First, he said that these stories circulated as little independent units, like beads on a string. Second, he believed these beads could be neatly classified by their literary form. Third, and this is the big one, he argued the early church didn't just preserve these stories, it actively invented a lot of them to meet its own practical needs. He thought these so-called laws of tradition could be used to reverse engineer all the changes and that in the end, the stories had almost no reliable historical details left in them.
So here's the process. A form critic would take a single story and just lift it out of its context, assuming that context was just a later addition by an editor. Then they'd classify its form. Step 3 was to apply those laws of tradition, like the idea that stories always get more detailed over time, to strip away what they thought were later embellishments. The whole goal was to recover a primitive original. And the final step? To decide who made it up. Was it really from Jesus? Or was it an invention of the Jewish church or maybe the Gentile church?
Bultmann and his followers basically sorted everything into three main buckets. You had your miracle stories, which were just that, narratives about a supernatural event. Then you had saying stories, where a little bit of story exists only to set up a key teaching, kind of like a punchline. And finally, you had isolated sayings, which were just statements from Jesus with no story around them at all. So, after putting the entire Gospels through this deconstruction machine, what was Bultmann's final verdict? What did he think was actually left of the historical Jesus? Well, the results were, to put it mildly, shocking. First off, the miracle stories.
For Bultmann, this was pretty much an open and shut case, all because of his own worldview. As Dr. Newman points out, Bultmann just didn't believe miracles could happen. Period. So he concluded that all of them were unhistorical inventions, without even really worrying about their literary form.
Okay, so what about the sayings of Jesus? After running everything through his critical filter, Bultmann concluded that only about 40 isolated sayings could be considered authentically from Jesus. Just 40.
And this slide right here really shows you just how radical his conclusion was. When you look at all the sayings attributed to Jesus in the Gospels, Bultmann's method led him to believe that a whopping 95% of them were just later inventions by the early church. Only a tiny 5% sliver, in his view, was the real deal.
A verdict that radical, well, it demands a case review, doesn't it? Was the method really sound, or were its foundational assumptions maybe a little bit flawed? Let's take a look at some of the major critiques of form criticism.
One of the core laws of tradition Bultmann used was this idea that stories always get longer, more detailed, and more embellished over time. But is that always true? Does a story never get simplified or shortened when it's retold?
Well, this is where critics really pounce. They point out that the Gospels themselves seem to contradict this law. See, most scholars believe the Gospel of Mark was written first. But when you compare Mark to Matthew and Luke, which were written later, you often find that Mark's version of a story is actually more detailed. Matthew and Luke sometimes shorten or simplify the stories, which is the exact opposite of what Bultmann's law would predict.
And another major critique was aimed at something called the criterion of dissonance, this idea that a saying is only authentic if it doesn't fit with either Judaism or early Christian teaching. Dr. Newman gives this fantastic analogy. That's like trying to understand Martin Luther by throwing out anything he said that also happened to fit with Catholicism, the very tradition he came out of. You'd have almost nothing left. Of course, there's going to be overlap.
But look, despite these really serious flaws, the method wasn't a total wash. It actually did offer some valuable insights. For one thing, it really highlighted the memorable anecdotal nature of the Gospels, which is exactly what you might expect from eyewitness accounts. It also forced scholars to pay attention to the literary forms and structures inside the Gospels. And it kind of backfired on its own premise, showing that even when you strip the stories down to their supposedly primitive layers, you still find a Jesus who performs miracles and makes messianic claims. And maybe the most important takeaway? It revealed a core bias. To find a non-supernatural Jesus in the Gospels, you have to start with the assumption that the supernatural isn't real in the first place. And that leaves us with a final, really interesting question to chew on. Form criticism focused so much on the shape of the stories, but does the fact that a story is well-structured, maybe even perfectly told, automatically make it an invention? Or could it just mean that the person telling it was actually there, and they knew how to tell a story that truly mattered?